Hey, welcome back, folks. This is Chris Temple. I'm editor and publisher of the National Investor, and today wearing a second hat as one of the parts of the upcoming Strategic Investment Insights 2022 conference that will take place, as you see here, at the Lincolnshire Marriott Hotel on the 6th and 7th of May. We urge you to come to this. This is going to be one that breaks the mold of a lot of the kinds of conferences you've been at. You'll see all the reasons why I say that on the website. We're going to have expert panelists. We've got a number of companies coming in a variety of sectors. 15 total, I think, is what we've got right now. We might add one or two more at the last minute, but it's going to be chock full of stuff for you to learn, a lot of knowledge, and some of that we're going to impart to you today in just a moment from my friend Scott Melbye. I've known Scott a lot of years. He was just testifying in front of the U.S. Senate, which he'll refer to, on some pending legislation regarding the uranium space. He is the head of the Uranium Producers Association of America, vice president of Uranium Energy Corporation, and also president of Uranium Royalty Company. And Scott, I'm glad you're able to be with us because we got a lot to cover to give folks a little bit of a taste of what they're going to learn at the conference.
Yeah, Chris, I'm very excited to join the conference in Chicago. This is an incredible time for the uranium industry and more broadly nuclear energy and how we fit in that green energy industry. And so I'm really eager to meet personally with all the attendees there. I'll be presenting and we'll have a booth there and be able to really fully unpack the Uranium Energy Corp story there.
Well, you know, in all the years you and I have known one another and been in touch, you read my stuff, I read yours. And as far as anybody active, and give us a quick Cliff Notes version of it, but I don't think there's anybody active in the industry. Now, I know Jerry Grandy, who for years was running Cameco. He's a brilliant guy, but he's retired. And you're my go-to guy now, buddy. So you actually helped, among other things, the government of Kazakhstan once upon a time in your travels, besides being the leading expert, I think, in America.
Yeah, it's been 37 years in uranium and nuclear energy, and I've really been blessed and fortunate to be a part of this industry. But everything from buying uranium for the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Station in Arizona to running the global marketing for 3 of the 4 largest uranium producers in the world. But the last 10 years has been really much more of an entrepreneurial phase of my career, where we've been building companies, and Uranium Energy Corp, which is not a new company, but is really emerging now as the largest American uranium mining company. And also founding a company which went public only 2.5 years ago, is Uranium Royalty Corp, which these are 2 very different ways to play the uranium investment, but very much pure plays in the uranium story.
That's neat. You know, you mentioned all of the years you've been involved, you know, in the years we've known each other, which is probably 10 or more by this point. We always were comparing notes at conferences and things, and kind of all of us in unison, I think, and other colleagues of ours wondering, when is this market, which you could see just lurking underneath the surface, when is it really going to emerge? And I've been insisting, especially for the last couple of years, you know, I told people, thankfully, near the bottom to buy UEC. We've got other uranium holdings as well. And it's just in the last couple of years that the sector, which I've said 2 years ago, and I say it again today, has the best fundamental setup of any commodity you could possibly look at, for a lot of reasons. And more so, I think, Scott, because whereas, in my view, at least, I won't put words in your mouth, the Biden administration has made some hash out of battery metals and a lot of these other things, you know, talking one way and acting differently. They and a lot of other governments, one by one, announcing new and expanded nuclear programs. Everybody seems to finally be getting this at the same time, that nuclear energy, generally speaking, is one of the best, if not the best way to deal with global warming, with climate change, reducing carbon emissions. What do you see that made the light bulb go off everybody's head seemingly at once?
Yeah, well, I think it's a growing realization, and it's quite broad, and it's really the first time I've seen in my career, and it's really been in the last 3 or 4 years, a realization that we cannot make a meaningful dent in carbon emissions without a significant contribution from nuclear energy. If society wants to move away from fossil fuels, we can't be reliant on renewables, wind and solar, which only run 30% of the time. They have an important part in the energy mix, but we've got to have something that's as clean and safe as wind and solar, and but runs 95% of the time, not 30%, and that's nuclear energy. So it's not surprising we've seen 62 new reactors come online around the world in the last 8 years. We have 54 more under construction. We're seeing a wave of advanced and small modular reactors like that being built by Bill Gates in Wyoming, literally to replace a retiring coal-fired power plant. This advanced reactor coming into Wyoming. Other states across the West and across the United States and the world are all looking at these more scalable, smaller modular reactors, which can really address our energy needs and still do it in a carbon-free manner.
Now, not many days ago, you, Abigail Wolf from SAIF, and some others were testifying in front of the Senate. And I know that there's been a couple pieces of legislation proposed, which would alternately cut off imports of uranium from Russia. Of course, enrichment is another question which needs to be addressed. Under the Trump administration, there was enabled a strategic uranium reserve, which, correct me if I'm wrong, still hasn't seen its first dollar, has it?
Right. Yeah, it was. It came out of the Trump administration, but it was funded through a bipartisan appropriations bill at the end of 2020. And now 17 months later, we're still waiting for that to get stood up. And boy, wouldn't it have been nice to have that in place by now because of the events in Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine, and this appalling attack and invasion of the Ukraine has really caused the world to not only think about where they get their energy supplies, but also where they get the uranium supplies. And in the United States, despite having 1 billion pounds of known and likely resources in the Western US, we rely on 50% of our uranium imports from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. And it's really appalling to think of $1.3 billion worth of uranium fuel purchases. That money, that hard currency going to Putin at a time like this is really unconscionable. So my testifying in the Senate was really to really highlight the importance of American energy independence, whether it's oil, gas, uranium, renewables, the minerals for the green economy. Producing electric vehicles requires a lot of nickel, lithium, cobalt, copper, and uranium is part of that story. So that was the focus of the hearing, and we really need to get off of this Russian uranium addiction immediately, not 3 years from now, 4 years from now. There's competing bills out there. Joe Manchin suggested that, well, maybe we'll get off Russian uranium in 2025. We think it should be sooner because we need to send the signals to companies like ours. Hey, it's time to rev up your operations. And we have two very significant production platforms in the states of Texas and Wyoming, two of the best places in the world to be in the resource business. One of our operations, the Wyoming operations, was really given a boost in December of last year when we acquired the assets of Uranium One, the very famous Uranium One Wyoming assets that were acquired by the Russians, and the whole Clinton Foundation scandal around that. Well, I'm happy to say that those very important American energy assets are back in American hands. We're a Texas-based company, and now we're looking to restart those operations and really bring the benefits to Wyoming and the United States in the process.
On that subject, I got to tell you folks, Scott helped me one time write a commentary that I wanted to write about that whole Hillary Clinton story. Of course, it was a very partisan and caustic talking point by some Republicans and conservatives that she, quote, gave away all of our uranium to Russia, which really wasn't technically all true. And Scott pointed out to me why that was the case and so forth. But yeah, it's nice that things have come full circle and that those assets have now been bought back by UEC. One more thing I want to point out for the folks right now, and again, please register, come listen to Scott. We've got experts on the conventional energy markets as well, battery metals, and a whole lot of other stuff, even stories in life sciences and medical technology, a couple of my other favorite story stocks that are already among my own recommendations. But Scott, I think it's important for people to realize that with UEC, and I'm going to jump off in this direction, with UEC and uranium generally, because of the nature of what's called ISR recovery methods, this is not necessarily a situation where, like a copper project or some nickel project or another hard rock project, you might be talking about numerous years to go through discovery, drilling, permitting, and so forth. This is production capability here in the US in the form of you and a couple other US based companies that can be brought back online relatively quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's important to note. And not only can it come on quickly, we're licensed and permitted in the United States to the highest standards of health, safety, environment. We have a technology, ISR, as you mentioned, which is a very benign technology, which basically reverses the natural process that got the uranium there in the first place, pumps it to the surface without the mining, excavation, mill tailings, waste rock, all the things that go with conventional mining. But yes, it can be done. We've got permitted license operations that can be brought on in months, not years, because if you had to start from scratch today, you probably would be looking at a 6 or 7 year lead time. So it's very important. We're in a global market. The Chinese are building nuclear power plants at such a pace now that they will exceed the installed capacity of the United States, who is currently the largest nuclear power program in the world. And so we're going to be in a competition for natural resources that also applies in the battery metals and copper and other things in the green economy. And so we better step up our efforts in sourcing our natural resources that benefit our economy, and we're not relying on countries like China or Russia going forward. So UEC is an exciting story. Come to the conference in Chicago. We can get into the nuts and bolts of uranium supply and demand. That alone, if you were an economist, you'd look at this commodity and say, wow, this is really poised to take off. And then you have the mega trends towards green energy and the unfortunate events in Ukraine really boosting the narrative around uranium right now.
Well, here as we close, I'm going to put up a cartoon that a mutual friend of ours, Jim Paterson, put a bug in my head one time. And I said, I think I can do that. So I got a hold of my cartoonist. I had the cartoon that afternoon. But I've often talked about when precious metals, gold stocks and silver stocks, exploration companies, when generalist investors get interested in those, it's like a 300-pound man jumping into a kitty-sized wading pool.
Yeah.
And this cartoon, of course, is an elephant jumping into a kiddie wading pool. And that's what this is going to look like ultimately when people get into the much smaller uranium space. There's not a whole lot of companies out there. And there's already been, I think UEC has quadrupled from its low or something like that of a year and a half, 2 years ago. And folks, this, in my opinion, at least, so take my opinion for what it might or might not be worth, that's only the start. This is a heck of a story where really a major public policy need and theme intersect with one heck of an investment theme. So Scott, I'm looking forward to seeing you again in a few weeks. And folks, you don't want to miss this. Register to come. If you can't physically be there, register on the website because you'll be able to get a lot of this information afterwards. So Scott, thanks much, buddy. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll see you soon.